Doma Sports Talk worldwide with some news from the world of boxing. So y'all know what time it is. You ain't in a rush to get concussed. Now, I got something for you to think about. You know, a lot of times with the fight that's coming up with Terrence Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, there's a whole lot of ways to look at it. And a lot of people are saying if Crawford were to beat Canelo, it's a huge thing. You know, even he's in the GOAT conversation. He definitely put himself in that conversation, right? And it's true because a lot of people have went up in weight on this magnitude and weren't successful, right? And I mean, good fighters. And I'm gonna give you guys one to think about, you know, because I've been watching Canelo, and I'm trying to watch him without knowing or thinking that he's been doped. But Canelo has been doing a lot of, has a lot of good fights. Even his fight against Bivol, some of the stuff he was doing. I watched the Golovkin fight or two, and Canelo, a bad boy, right? Bad boy. Let's be real. He's a bad boy. So that's just how it is when it comes to Canelo. He's awesome. So if Terrence Crawford were to beat Canelo under these circumstances, after all the other stuff that Crawford has done, then he is awesome. You just gotta give it to him. A lot of people go around and talk about Crawford's resume, but I just, I don't like to call people names, but those are just straight up ignorant people that just don't know. And those that know and just saying that, then those are idiots or racist or whatever else kind of agenda they have. Because, what you're doing is you're calling a whole lot of people, a whole lot of great boxers like they're nothing. And then, regardless of what they were, there weren't any close fights in there. Madrimov was not that close as people are saying. But it's, for it to be his fourth weight division, not really. You know what I mean? If that's the only one you got. But you're calling a lot of great fighters nothing, right? But I'm gonna holler at you guys about one guy and one fight that makes you kind of think a little bit, and that'll be Taz. Y'all remember I used to call this guy Taz, because when Taz come in the cartoons, you remember all animals, no matter what kind of animal you was running, because Taz was on the way. That's how it was with my man Guillermo Rigondeux, right? Guillermo Rigondeux, man, he couldn't get fights. People lying. Bob Arum said the same thing. That's why the parallels and the similarities are eerie. Said the same thing about him. He can't sell him, right? He's boring. Now, mind you, this little old guy knocking a lot of people out. They couldn't hit him, but he was hitting them. Beat a Nonito Donaire. Beat the brakes off of Nonito Donaire when Nonito Donaire was like 33-1. And Nonito Donaire lost his first fight in his first or second fight or something. He had ran off about 30. Nonito Donaire was like number 1 or 2, the pound for pound. Guillermo whitewashed him, beat the hell out of him, right? Now others later, like for example, Monster Inouye, had a closer fight with McNair, with Donovan Donaire, all right, Donaire or whatever, right? Nonito Donaire. He had a real close fight with him and got big credit for it. Broke his eye socket and everything. That didn't happen to Guillermo Rigondeux. After Rigondeux beat him by that fact, they start calling him boring. And he was breaking people's jaws and eye sockets and all of that, bro. And they called him boring. And then you wonder why I say BTBG here? Now he beats Donaire, who's the baddest one out there, and gets called boring. And he beat the hell out of him. Just Donaire couldn't hit him much. Right, so a fighter like that, he couldn't get fights, was obviously the baddest one. He's seen the pound for pound list of things. I think he got so high as number 3, but it's reluctantly, right? So he couldn't get fights, and he was really a 118 pounder. He was trying to go up to 122 so he could fight somebody, and he got a couple of fights there. But I remember Lomachenko was at 130 on his way to 135, right? And Guillermo Rigondeux was like, man, that's the only fight I can take. I got to go way up here to fight him. You know what I'm saying? Because I can't get nobody else, right? So they get a fight, and I can remember I was saying then, will anybody at least say, seeing as they know this guy's a 118-pounder, parading around as a 122-pounder, but he's not. He's really a 118-pounder. Could somebody tell Lomachenko, who would, go to 126 and kind of meet the guy. Seeing that it was 118, it's still been, he would have went up 2, but he had a fight or two at 122, so it would have been halfway, seeming as though he's just as high on the pound-for-pound list. He's just as decorated, because, when they talk about Lomachenko, they like to say it's an amateur career. But against Guillermo Rigondeux or Taz, you can't come with that, because his amateur career was just as impressive, right? So, we can meet halfway, so that didn't happen either. So he had to go all the way up to 130 pounds. Now, here's the deal. He was stopped TKO by Lomachenko, the bigger fighter, right? Now, he stopped on his stool because he's a southpaw. But he broke or fractured his southpaw hand in the fight against Lomachenko. And he said, shoot, I got to stop this, right? And he got a lot of flack for that. Like, people, you should just keep on fighting. I'm like, man, no. If you would have met me halfway, maybe. But I ain't going to be up here 14 pounds lighter than this dude, and then I got to fight him with one hand, too. To prove what to who? That's what the point. It's like, to prove what to whom? Because he probably wouldn't get no props if he did it anyway, right? But those are the things. Now, at the end of the day, he didn't beat Lomachenko. So in this scenario, Lomachenko would be your boy Canelo Alvarez, a good technical fighter that's naturally bigger. And that's what's going down, right? The smaller, awesome, got a lot of punching power for his size and skilled, be Terence Crawford or Guillermo Rigondeux, didn't have a chance against Lomachenko. And Rigondeaux is comparable to Terence Crawford. Now, we are recency biased. And a lot of you guys have probably forgotten who Guillermo Rigondeux or Taz. I would not call this dude Taz if it wasn't that way. This guy was definitely the best boxer going at the time. And everybody that's in the boxing would tell you, Tasmanian Devil, your boy Guillermo Rigondeux was all that. He's totally skilled, had enough power, and had an impeccable defense. And he couldn't beat Lomachenko under those circumstances. I'm thinking if they met halfway and or something like that, would have been a fair fight or close to fair, then I got Taz, even over Lomachenko. But it wasn't, and that's what happened. So that's a fight to think about when you're thinking about Terence Crawford going up here messing with Canelo Alvarez. You gotta at least think about that, right? If Taz had a problem with Lomachenko, then it's legitimate to say Terence Crawford gonna have a problem with Canelo Alvarez. But if he pulls this off, then it shouldn't be nothing said, because great fighters weren't able to achieve what Terence Crawford's going for right now. We're still in the he's going for it phase. But if he were to do this, I'm just telling y'all this so you guys can have the significance of what he did, because others weren't able to do that. That's a damn good example. Your boy Taz versus Lomachenko. It's something to think about, guys. Just something to think about. Doma Sports Talk Worldwide. And I'm out of here.